All right, so this structure, all right, so if we have this capillary bed, arteries meet the veins, arteries are bringing in lots of materials, okay? They're bringing in oxygen, there's nutrients in the blood. When we get to this point right here, where there's just a single layer thick, okay? Materials can move through these cells into the tissues because the tissues might need them. Is that correct? And if the tissues are metabolically active, the tissues are giving off waste that will get picked up and returned to the heart. All right? Now, these lymph vessels that we have, okay, these finger-like projections are just doing that. They're just doing this type of projection. And they're picking up the fluids that are found at these tissues. But they're picking up only about 10%, okay? So we're still having the majority of that fluid at that tissue level being picked up by the venous side of the capillary bed. Does that make sense? So only about 10% is moving into the lymph vessels. All right? Now, here's the thing. They're picking this up at all areas of these capillary beds. And remember, we don't even have a clue, okay? Because they're microscopic at this point. Now, when we begin to look at these lymph vessels are found throughout the body. Now, depending upon where they're going to be found is going to affect what they do, okay? Now, the lymph vessels, we're not going to find them in tissue that's avascular. What was a tissue in our body that didn't have a blood supply? Cartilage? You guys remember that? Okay. So if we don't have blood supply, we can't have the lymph. Now, another place that you're not going to find.
Would you say something avascular?
Avascular.
How'd you use it? Would you say?
What tissues in our body were avascular?
Oh, okay, but not, so they're not found in avascular.
They're not found. They're also not found in the central nervous system. Because what is the central nervous system going to have for picking up and cleansing?
The CSF?
The cerebrospinal fluid, okay? We're not going to find lymph vessels in the bone marrow, and we're not going to find lymph vessels in parts of the spleen, okay? Now, one place that we're going to find them, and they're actually very special, lacteals. Ever heard of that term? Lacteals. These are the lymph capillaries that you're going to find in the small intestines. Because one of the jobs for this system was that fat digestion. So you're going to have these lacteals, which are the lymph, these little capillaries, these little finger-like projections, okay, that are going to be in the small intestines. They're going to be able to transport fat into circulation. How do we get the fat droplet? If we take in our foodstuffs and we break it down, how did we break it down? What did it require Anybody remember? Enzymes from the liver. We've got stuff from the gallbladder. We got stuff that'll break it down into a fat droplet. Now we need to get it so that it can travel through the blood to the cells that are going to need it, right? Okay, the lymph system is going to help do this. Okay, so the lacteals that are with the small intestines, they're important in the digestive system. So they have these vessels, once again, one-way flow of fluids. They're going to be picking up at this capillary end, and their fluid will be moving from the small to the larger lymph vessel. Now, as it moves into the lymph vessel, first of all, the fluid of lymph is going to move much slower, okay? How long did it take for if a red blood cell left the left side of the heart to return to the right? About a minute, okay? Now, lymph is going to take much longer. Now, the structure of the lymph vessel is very interesting. The walls of a lymph vessel are very similar to what we see in the veins. They're going to have 3 layers. They've got an inner, a middle, and an outer layer. Outer layer, connective tissue, kind of tough. Smooth muscle on the middle layer. On the inner layer, endothelial. Think about that simple squamous. The endothelial does an infolding and makes valves. The flow that we want moving through the lymph vessel, we want it to move in one direction. So let's think about this flow. Do I have capillaries in my big toe? We're just going to start at the most extreme. Just far away as I can think of. And as far away I can think of is the tip of my big toe. All right, now, I've got capillaries in that big toe, so that means that's not one of the areas that did count for a lymph vessel. So now I got the lymph vessels down there, all right? Are my tissues metabolically active? Okay, why are they active, men? What am I doing? I'm walking, all right? So they're metabolically active. So that means I'm trying to get the blood flow down there. So now I'm gonna have, flow coming into those tissues. Those tissues are gonna have the fluid get in there. The lymph's gonna be able to pick up roughly 10% at that point. And it's going to begin the movement. The movement is one direction. And if I'm thinking about my big toe, that means all that fluid that's getting picked up now has to work against gravity, because where do I need it to go back to? I needed to get back to the blood circulation. Now, on the way from my big toe all the way back up here, all right, I've got this fluid that's going to pass through those lymph vessels. As it passes through those lymph vessels, it's going to make pit stops. It's going to flow into lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are highly concentrated in certain areas of the body. So lymph nodes, if I started down here at my big toe, I got to have that fluid begin going and moving and going and moving and going. I had a whole bunch of lymph nodes. So on my travels back to what we term collecting ducts, okay, that fluid is going to hit lymph nodes. So that fluid will hit the first lymph node. In that lymph node, what's going to be sitting there?
T cells.
T cells. Anything else? How about some macrophages that might be just kind of sitting in there? Maybe some of the other white blood cells. So as that lymph moves into that lymph node, it gets exposed to all of that disease-fighting, all those disease-fighting cells. So it'll come in, leave that lymph node, but because I'm in a whole patch of lymph nodes now, it'll make another pit stop at the next one. Get cleansed even more. The next one, even more. Are you following what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
All right? So by the time we return to these collecting ducts, okay, which are going to make their way to the blood circulation, that fluid is now super clean. Throughout the body, we're going to have what's called a lymphatic trunk. Now, a lymphatic trunk, notice this is where we're going to have a lot of lymph nodes. Okay? They are basically named after the area of the body they're serving. Note where we find lymph nodes. Okay? Now, the lymph trunks, I'm going to have a lumbar trunk, I have an intestinal trunk, intercostal, bronchomediastinal, jugular, subclavian. Those lymph vessels from the body that are all out here in all these tissues from head to toe, they're going to make it into one of these trunks. So from my big toe, which trunk do you think it made its way into? Probably made it into the lumbar. And then it'll begin to make or continue its pathway. When we get into the trunks are going to want to pass all of that fluid that made it into them into one of the two collecting ducts that we have in the body. We're going to find that we have our thoracic duct, the right lymphatic duct. Both of these are within the thoracic cavity.